Listen carefully. God led you here because He is moving in your life right now. Doors are opening. Miracles are unfolding. But the question is, do you see them? Too many people walk through life thinking miracles are just stories from the Bible, things that happened long ago, but not today. That's a lie from the enemy. The truth. Miracles are happening now, right in front of you, in ways you may not even recognize. But here's the challenge. If you're not spiritually aware, if your faith isn't activated, you could miss what God is doing. You could walk right past the very breakthrough you've been praying for. That's why you need to listen, really listen, to this message. By the end of this video, you'll have clarity. You'll understand how to recognize the miracles already unfolding, how to trust God's perfect timing, and how to boldly walk through the doors He is opening for you. Because make no mistake, He is opening them. But here's what I need from you. Stay with me until the end. Don't click away. This could be the very word you've been waiting for. God is speaking. Will you listen? Now, let's get into it. Most people think of miracles as something from ancient times. Stories of Moses parting the Red Sea, Jesus walking on water, or blind men receiving sight. They read about miracles in the Bible, but never expect to see them in their own lives. And that's exactly why they don't. Miracles are not a thing of the past. They are happening right now, all around you. But here's the challenge. Most people miss them. Not because God isn't working, but because they aren't looking. See, we expect miracles to be loud, dramatic, impossible to ignore. But God's power often moves in quiet, unexpected ways. The job offer that came right when you needed it. The car accident you narrowly avoided. The sickness that should have taken you out, but somehow you're still standing. These aren't coincidences. These are the fingerprints of God. But here's the problem. Unbelief blocks miracles. Even in Jesus' hometown, He couldn't perform many miracles because of their lack of faith. Matthew 13:58. Imagine that. God in the flesh, ready to move, but the people's doubt shut the door on their blessings. So here's my question to you. Are you seeing what God is doing? Or are you so focused on what hasn't happened yet that you're missing the miracle right in front of you? When you shift your perspective, when you start expecting God to move, you'll realize He's been working all along. Your breakthrough might not look the way you imagined, but it's already in motion. Miracles aren't just a story from the past. They are your reality today. But you have to believe it to see it. Are you ready to open your eyes? You see, miracles aren't just about recognizing what God is doing. They're also about trusting when He chooses to do it. And that's where most people struggle. Because what happens when you're believing for a miracle, but all you hear is silence? One of the hardest lessons in faith is this. God's timing is not your timing. We live in a world of instant gratification. We want things now. But God doesn't work on human schedules. He moves according to His perfect plan, not our impatient demands. Here's where many people struggle. They pray, they believe, and then nothing happens. Days turn into months, months into years, and still the door remains closed. And in that waiting, doubt creeps in. Did I hear God wrong? Is He even listening? Why is this taking so long? But here's the truth. Delays are not denials. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it never will. Sometimes, God isn't saying no. He's saying, not yet. Why? Because He's preparing you. Because He's aligning things behind the scenes that you can't see. Think about Joseph. He had a dream of greatness, but before stepping into it, he was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned. If Joseph had gotten bitter, if he had quit in the waiting, he would have never reached the palace. What seemed like delays were actually divine setups leading him to his destiny. The same is true for you. What if the door hasn't opened because you're not ready yet? What if God is protecting you from something you don't even know about? What if the very thing you're complaining about is actually a blessing in disguise? Trust the process. Trust that when God opens the door, no one can shut it. Revelation 3:8. His timing is always perfect, even when you don't understand it. So instead of stressing over when, start preparing for what's coming. Because when the door finally opens, you won't just walk through it, you'll run. But here's something you may not have considered. Not every open door is from God. And if you don't learn to discern the difference, you might walk into something that looks like a blessing but was actually sent to distract you. Not every open door is from God. That's something many people fail to realize. Just because an opportunity appears doesn't mean it's divine. Just because a path looks easy or promising doesn't mean it's the right one. And if you don't learn to discern which doors are from God and which are distractions, you could end up walking into something that pulls you away from His plan rather than pushing you deeper into it. The enemy is a master of deception. He knows how to make the wrong thing look like a blessing. He knows how to make a temptation look like an answered prayer. That's why you can't rely solely on your emotions or personal desires when trying to decide if a door is truly from God. You need wisdom. You need spiritual discernment. And most importantly, you need to seek God first before stepping into anything. One of the clearest ways to recognize a door from God is by asking yourself if it aligns with His Word. God will never open a door that requires you to compromise your values, cut corners, or walk in disobedience. He will never lead you into something that forces you to lie, cheat, or turn your back on Him just to get ahead. If you ever have to disobey God to walk through a door, it is not from Him. Another way to discern God's doors is by paying attention to your peace. When God opens a door, there may be challenges, but there will also be a sense of inner confirmation, a calm assurance that this is the right path. On the other hand, when something isn't from God, there is often a heaviness, confusion, or an unshakable feeling that something isn't right. God is not the author of confusion, and if an opportunity is bringing nothing but chaos, you need to step back and seek His guidance before moving forward. Most importantly, a door from God will never pull you away from Him. It will never make you so busy that you no longer pray. It will never consume you so much that you no longer have time to seek Him. A true God-given opportunity will strengthen your faith, not weaken it. If something is leading you away from God, even if it seems like a great opportunity, it's not a blessing, it's a trap. That's why prayer is essential. You can't afford to rush into something just because it looks good on the surface. You have to ask God for clarity. You have to wait for His confirmation. You have to trust that if a door is truly from Him, He will make it clear in due time. And if something doesn't feel right, if there is hesitation in your spirit, don't force it. A door from God doesn't need to be pushed open. It will open naturally at the right time. So before you step into anything, ask yourself, is this leading me toward my purpose or pulling me away? Is this drawing me closer to God or causing me to drift? A right door will never require you to lose yourself to walk through it. And when you recognize the doors that God is truly opening, you won't have to question them. You'll just know. And even when the right door opens, there's something that will try to stop you from walking through it. Something that has kept far too many people stuck when they were meant to step forward. That thing. Fear. Fear will always show up when you're on the verge of something great. Every time God opens a door, the enemy will try to plant doubt in your mind. He'll whisper, "What if you fail? What if this isn't really from God? What if you're not ready? And if you let those lies take root, you'll hesitate. You'll shrink back. You'll stay in the comfort of the familiar when you were meant to step into the extraordinary. Fear is a prison, and if you allow it to control you, you will miss out on the very blessings God has prepared for you. The enemy wants to keep you stuck. He wants you to second-guess yourself so much that you never move forward. But here's the truth. God does not open doors for you to stand in front of them in fear. He opens them so you can walk through boldly with confidence in Him. Think about Peter. When Jesus called him to step out of the boat and walk on water, Peter actually did it. He was walking on the impossible, moving in the miraculous. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the storm around him, he began to sink. The waves didn't change. His focus did. Fear crept in, and it pulled him under. The same thing happens to you. The moment you focus on your worries instead of God's power, you begin to sink into doubt, hesitation, and inaction. But here's what you need to understand. God would not have brought you to this opportunity if He didn't equip you for it. If He has opened a door, it means He has already placed everything you need inside of you to walk through it. Your job is not to figure out every step ahead of time. Your job is to trust the one who opened the door and take the first step in faith. What if the thing you're afraid of is actually the thing that will change your life? What if, instead of overthinking, you just go for it? What if, instead of giving in to doubt, you trust that God is with you every step of the way? Fear will always be there, but courage is moving forward anyway. And when you do, you will realize that the fear was never as big as it seemed. It was just a distraction trying to keep you from stepping into your destiny. So the question is, will you let fear win, or will you trust that God has already made a way? The door is open. Now, it's time to walk through it. Life can feel overwhelming. We're surrounded by challenges, pain, negativity, and distractions pulling us in every direction. But through every struggle, there's one answer: God. Here on Jesus Daily Blessings, I share messages to guide you, uplift you, and remind you of God's promises for your life. If you want to stay closer to God, subscribe to our channel, and let's walk this faith journey together. But what about the doors that don't open? The ones that slam shut in your face, leaving you wondering if God has forgotten you? What if I told you that closed doors are often the biggest blessings in disguise? Sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that God will close doors. Doors we wanted, doors we prayed for, doors we were convinced were part of our future. And when that happens, it can feel like rejection. It can feel like failure. But what if I told you that God's closed doors are just as much a blessing as His open ones? See, when a door closes, our natural reaction is to ask, why? Why didn't this work out? Why did this opportunity fall apart? Why did this person walk away? But what if, instead of asking why, you asked what? What is God protecting me from? What better thing is He preparing for me? Because here's the truth, God's no is never about taking something from you. It's about positioning you for something greater. Think about it. If you had gotten everything you once prayed for, would you even be where you are today? How many times have you looked back and thanked God for not giving you what you thought you wanted? The relationship that didn't work out, the job you didn't get, the opportunity that fell through. What you once saw as a loss, you now see was God's protection. God sees what you cannot see. He knows what's behind that closed door. Maybe it's a toxic environment, a wrong opportunity, or something that would have distracted you from your true calling. And because he loves you, he shuts it before you can walk into something that would destroy you. You have to trust that when a door closes, it's because God is directing you elsewhere. It doesn't mean he's abandoned you. It means he's leading you to something better. But here's the key. You can't stay stuck mourning what didn't happen. You have to trust him enough to let go and move forward. So the next time a door closes in your life, instead of questioning God, thank him. Because if he's saying no to something, it means he's saying yes to something far greater. And when the right door opens, you'll understand exactly why this one had to close. And that's why you can't just trust what you see. Because sometimes the breakthrough isn't visible yet. Sometimes the door has already opened in the spirit, but you won't see it until you take the first step of radical faith. Faith is believing before you see it. It's moving forward even when things don't make sense. It's trusting God's plan even when the path ahead is unclear. And that is where most people struggle. They want proof before they take a step. They want to see the miracle before they believe it's possible. But that's not how faith works. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 5:7, we walk by faith, not by sight. That means sometimes God will call you to move forward before you have all the answers. He will open a door, but he won't show you what's on the other side until you step through it. And that can be terrifying. Because human nature wants certainty. We want guarantees. But faith requires trust. Think about when God told Abraham to leave his homeland and go to a place that he would show him. Abraham had no map, no detailed plan, no clear destination, just a promise. But he went anyway. And because he obeyed, he stepped into a destiny greater than he could have ever imagined. The same applies to you. God has placed something in your spirit. A calling, a purpose, a door he is opening. But if you're waiting until everything makes sense, you'll never move. Because faith doesn't make sense. It's believing when the evidence isn't there yet. It's trusting that God will provide even when the bank account is empty. It's walking forward in obedience even when people think you're crazy. Here's what you need to remember. Faith activates the power of God in your life. Many times, God is waiting for you to take a step before he releases the blessing. The moment you move in faith, you give him room to work. You show him that you trust him, and in return, he opens doors that you could have never opened on your own. So don't wait until everything is perfect. Don't wait until you feel ready. Take the step. Move forward in faith. Because when you do, you'll see that God was guiding you all along. But here's what most people overlook. Faith isn't just about believing. It's about doing. Because the greatest miracles, the biggest breakthroughs, they don't just happen on their own. They follow obedience. Obedience is the key that unlocks miracles. Throughout the Bible, miracles didn't just happen randomly. They followed an act of faith, a step of obedience, a willingness to trust God even when it didn't make sense. Many people want God's blessings, but they aren't willing to do what he asks. They want the miracle, but they resist the process that brings it. Look at the story of Naaman in 2 Kings 5. He was a powerful man, a commander in the army, but he had leprosy. He came to the prophet Elisha, expecting a grand display of healing. But instead, Elisha told him to do something simple. Go and wash in the Jordan River 7 times. At first, Naaman was offended. He wanted something dramatic. He wanted a spectacle. But his miracle wasn't in the dramatic. It was in obedience. When he finally humbled himself and followed the instruction, his skin was healed completely. How many people miss their miracle because they refuse to obey God's instruction. Maybe you've been praying for a breakthrough, but God has been nudging you to let go of a toxic relationship, to step into something new, or to trust Him with your finances. And instead of obeying, you hesitate. You question. You delay. But what if your miracle is waiting on the other side of your obedience? Think about when Jesus turned water into wine. The servants were told to fill the jars with water and take them to the master of the banquet. That must have seemed ridiculous. Water for a banquet. But they obeyed. And as they obeyed, the miracle happened. The water became wine. God is looking for people who will trust Him, even when the instructions seem small, even when it doesn't make sense. Sometimes your obedience will look like stepping out in faith when you don't have all the answers. Sometimes it will look like letting go of a plan you thought was best so God can give you something better. But one thing is certain, obedience positions you for supernatural breakthrough. What is God asking you to do? What small step of faith is He waiting for you to take? The miracle is already prepared. The door is already open. But it's your obedience that will take you through it. And the moment you step into obedience, the moment you start walking in God's will, don't be surprised when opposition rises against you. Because every open door attracts a fight. And you need to be ready. Here's something no one likes to talk about. Every new level comes with a new battle. People think that once God opens a door, everything will be easy. But that's not how the enemy works. The moment you step into something great, opposition will rise against you. And if you're not prepared for it, you might start to doubt the very thing God has given you. Look at the Israelites. After 400 years of slavery, God opened the door to their freedom. He led them out of Egypt with miracles, signs, and wonders. But what happened next? The enemy came after them. Pharaoh's army chased them down, and suddenly they were trapped between the Red Sea and their enemies. Fear crept in. Some of them even thought about going back to Egypt. But God had already made a way. The Red Sea didn't part before they moved. It parted as they stepped forward in faith. The opposition wasn't a sign that they were on the wrong path. It was confirmation that they were stepping into something greater. The same thing happens in your life. When God opens a door, don't be surprised if challenges come immediately after. The moment you step into your calling, you'll face resistance. The moment you start walking in faith, doubt will attack you. The moment you begin to elevate, people will question you, criticize you, and try to pull you back down. Opposition is proof that you are moving in the right direction. But here's the good news. If God opened the door, no one can shut it. No enemy, no critic, no circumstance can stop what God has set in motion. You just have to stand firm. Keep moving forward. Keep trusting Him. Because when God calls you to something, He equips you for it. The attacks may come, but so will His strength. The battles may rise, but so will His protection. So when the opposition comes, don't panic. Don't question the door God opened. Recognize it for what it is, a sign that your breakthrough is bigger than you imagined. Keep walking, keep believing, and watch as God clears the path before you. But even in the battle, there's something that can keep your faith strong. Something that will remind you, even in the toughest moments, that God is still working. And that's something. Testimonies. One of the most powerful ways to build faith is by remembering what God has already done. Testimonies remind us that God is still in the business of miracles. They remind us that the same God who parted the Red Sea healed the sick, and raised the dead is still working today. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. Think back to a time when God came through for you. A time when you thought all hope was lost, but suddenly, things shifted. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was God. And if He did it before, He can do it again. Throughout history, we've seen people who trusted God and walked through the doors He opened. Joseph was betrayed, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and imprisoned. Yet every closed door led him closer to his destiny. By the time God's plan unfolded, he was second in command over Egypt, positioned to save an entire nation. What seemed like rejection was actually redirection. Even in modern times, there are countless testimonies of God's miracles. People who were told they'd never walk again suddenly heal. People who lost everything but somehow, against all odds, were restored. Businesses that seemed like they were failing, suddenly flourishing. These are not accidents. These are divine interventions. But here's the key. Testimonies are not just meant to be remembered. They're meant to be shared. When you testify about what God has done, you encourage others to believe for their own breakthrough. You remind them that God is still opening doors, still making a way, still working in the lives of His people. So don't keep your testimony to yourself. If God has moved in your life, speak about it. If He has opened a door for you, tell someone. Your testimony might be the very thing that strengthens someone else's faith. And as you share, you'll find your own faith growing too. Because every time you declare what God has done, you're declaring that He is not finished yet. And if you think God's done, think again. Because what He's already done is just proof of what He's about to do. But here's the real question. Are you living in expectation? Because the ones who expect miracles are the ones who see them. God is not done with you yet. The doors He has opened are just the beginning. But here's the secret. You have to live in expectation. If you want to see more of God's miracles, you have to wake up every day believing that He is still working. You have to position yourself in faith, ready for whatever He wants to do next. Too many people miss their blessings because they aren't expecting them. They pray, but deep down, they don't really believe things will change. They ask for miracles, but they live like nothing is coming. But faith isn't just about praying, it's about preparing. It's about walking like the promise is already yours. Look at Elijah in 1 Kings 18. After a long drought, he prayed for rain. But he didn't just pray, he sent his servant to look for rain. The first time, nothing. The second time, nothing. But Elijah didn't stop expecting. He kept sending his servant back, and on the seventh time, a small cloud appeared. And that small cloud turned into an unstoppable storm of blessing. That is the power of expectation. When you live in faith, you don't just wish for miracles. You prepare for them. You don't just hope for open doors. You position yourself to walk through them. God is moving. He is opening doors. He is making a way. But the question is, are you ready for what's coming? Stay in faith. Stay in expectation. Because the best is yet to come. And when God moves, it will be greater than anything you ever imagine. Now, it's time to take action. Because miracles aren't just something you wait for. They're something you step into. And there's one simple way to activate your faith right now. You've heard the message. You felt the truth of it in your spirit. Now, don't just listen, declare it. Speak life over your situation. Activate your faith. Drop a comment below and declare, I trust the doors God is opening for me. There is power in your words. When you declare something in faith, you align yourself with God's promises. You shift your mindset from doubt to expectation. You step into agreement with what He is already doing in your life. Maybe you've been waiting for confirmation. Maybe you've been hesitant, unsure if you're ready to walk through the door God has opened. This is your moment to step forward. Write it. Speak it. Believe it. Let heaven and earth witness your faith today. And if this message has spoken to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs encouragement. You never know whose life could change because you shared a word in due season. God is moving. Miracles are happening. Are you ready to walk through the door? Declare it now in the comments. I trust the doors God is opening for me. And remember, the best is yet to come. Amen. Please like this video and leave a heartfelt amen in the comments. If you want to stay closer to God, subscribe to our channel.